From a model wife to the queen of OnlyFans, how my wife put me in a debt of thousands. Hello, Reddit. I'm Alex, and to be honest, I never thought I'd end up here, sharing a story that would have felt like a cheap thriller to me just a year ago. My wife Sophie and I got married in 2018, and I was always sure she was my perfect match. We met in a small town in Ohio, where we both worked in government offices, and we built our life together. Back then, everything was stable and secure, and even our finances were in check. But since the end of 2021, everything has taken a nosedive. I first noticed cracks when Sophie started going through sudden changes at work. She said she wanted to do something meaningful for the world and left her stable job to help others. Sophie had always dreamed of making a difference, and I supported her, even when she began doing it on a volunteer basis and asking for funds for projects to help those in need. Over time, she began spending more and more on so-called charity work, which required additional financial support. At first, I thought it was just a phase, that soon she'd find her footing in this new field. But the expenses kept climbing, and every month, I had to sign off on new loans under her name. One day, when I decided to check our joint account, I was hit like a bolt of lightning. In the past 3 months alone, over $15,000 had been withdrawn. I started tallying all the loans and realized that by the end of 2022, we owed banks over $60,000. Sophie assured me it was fine, saying, "All businesses need startup investments." She confidently claimed that in a year or two, we'd see it all pay off, and I believed her because, what else was I supposed to do? Every expense was justified by her as going towards advertising, helping others, investing in projects that would supposedly help hundreds of people. But something inside me was breaking. In December of last year, I checked her accounts again and saw another astronomical figure, nearly $10,000 withdrawn in just 1 month. As I wondered where she was getting the funds for these transactions, I felt the ground slipping out from under me. When I confronted her directly, Sophie simply replied that it was a necessary investment to broaden her impact and accomplish more. She assured me that a significant income was coming soon. Her words felt like an empty promise, but I was too crushed to argue. She always knew just what to say when I tried to question these expenses, leaving me with the feeling that it was somehow my fault, that I just didn't believe in her. I held on to the last thread of hope because I didn't want to destroy our relationship. I remember sitting in my car outside the bank in February of this year, feeling like I was falling into a black hole. When we once again didn't have enough money for utilities, I began to feel like I was losing control. The thought echoed in my mind, what if all this is just a fabrication? What if the money is going somewhere entirely different, not for what she said, but I pushed those doubts away. Back then, I thought it was just stress and that I had to support her. I sat there, looking at the pile of statements that had accumulated on the table in our small apartment, and it felt like my whole life was disappearing into these endless lists of debt. I couldn't understand how the woman I loved could be leading us toward financial ruin, and yet she was so determined to keep spending enormous amounts on this project, one that I couldn't even verify existed. At that point, all I could do was wrestle with despair and hope that one day, it would all come to an end. Reddit user comments Lonely Mountain. Wow, this is a nightmare. I can't even imagine what it feels like when your life falls apart because of someone you trust the most. Stay strong, man. Red Panda Slayer. I don't know, but I get the feeling she's hiding something. People don't act like that when they're genuinely helping others. All those expenses look suspicious. Maybe it's time to involve a lawyer before it's too late. Forgotten soul. It's hard even reading this. I had a similar experience with my ex, though not on this scale. Money can bring up serious conflicts. You're strong for still holding on. Gladiator 87. Dude, this sounds like a scam. You should never trust someone else entirely with finances, even if it's your partner. I'd start gathering evidence because it all sounds super fishy. March 2023 passed, and once again, I checked Sophie's accounts, which had lately become my personal nightmare. If we owed the bank $60,000 back in January, that number had now skyrocketed to a horrific $85,000. All of it, according to Sophie, were investments in her projects. I could no longer just take her word for it, everything was looking far too strange. I started gathering every bank statement, recording every transaction, trying to understand where this money was going. But the more I dug, the more it felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. Every evening, I sat in our empty kitchen, in the same apartment we'd rented since 2019, and I couldn't understand how it had all come to this. Imagine how it feels to be utterly powerless, watching your life fall apart and feeling unable to do anything about it. Sophie kept repeating the same promises, like rehearsed lines, "Just a little more time, Alex, and everything will pay off." But how could I believe that when every month we sank deeper into debt and the person who'd promised support left me entirely in the dark? One evening, in late March, I finally worked up the courage for a difficult conversation with Sophie. We were sitting on our old couch in the living room, and I directly asked her why we had so much debt and where the money was going. At first, she looked away, then gave a nervous smile and said, "Alex, don't worry so much. It's temporary, I'm just helping people who need it." Her words sounded empty, lacking sincerity, as if she herself didn't fully believe what she was saying. Although I wanted to let the conversation go, something inside wouldn't let me, and I kept asking questions. After a few minutes, Sophie raised her voice, saying I didn't trust her, calling me paranoid, and saying she was going through a rough patch. But what was I supposed to do? Our financial situation was worsening every month. I felt betrayed, as if I was being deliberately kept in the dark, and I couldn't understand how the woman I trusted so deeply could lead us to this brink. Days passed as I tried to collect my thoughts and find some way out, but the only solution was to take out yet another loan to cover previous debts. Now, as April began, we owed nearly $100,000 to the banks, and I felt lost within those figures. Every night, I lay in bed, listening to Sophie watching something on her phone, unable to sleep. I started having horrible panic attacks, especially at night when I was left alone with my thoughts. Memories of our wedding played in my mind, of the time we promised each other eternal support and love. And it was all shattering to pieces. Sometimes, I thought it would have been better never to have gotten married, but these were the thoughts of a person in despair, someone with no idea where to turn next. I felt as though the world around me was collapsing, and whatever I tried would be useless. The worst part was that I couldn't talk to anyone about this. My parents, friends, all of them thought we had the perfect marriage, that we supported each other through everything. But the truth was, I kept this whole lie to myself, not wanting to damage her reputation, because I still held on to the hope that things would return to normal. Reddit user comments silent observer: "Oh man, that sounds terrifying. Keeping all of this inside? If I were you, I would have already turned to a financial advisor or at least a therapist. You shouldn't carry this burden alone." Real truth seeker: I know how hard it is when you can't trust those closest to you. But why is she being so secretive? It seems like this is something much bigger than just helping others. No way but down. I'm really sorry you're going through this. I don't want to sound harsh, but it might be time to take care of yourself before things get any worse. Maybe it's time to open your eyes and see this from a different angle. Helping Hand 01: I went through something similar. When someone starts hiding money or they're spending from you, it's a sign that things are not right. I also went near bankruptcy because I didn't see the warning signs. This time, I decided not to just sit back. April was coming to an end, the debts were piling up, and my mental health was on the brink. I couldn't live in this uncertainty anymore, so one morning, when Sophie went out to meet a friend, I sat down at her laptop. I'd never even considered looking through her personal files before, but instinct told me there was something darker behind these expenses than just helping others. For the first time in my life, I felt like a spy in my own home, but within minutes, I stumbled upon something shocking: browser history and open tabs with financial statements spanning several months. Some of the pages were open on OnlyFans. I couldn't believe my eyes, staring at her profile, where she used the alias Sophie_Glow. I was frozen from head to toe. Sophie was running a popular profile where she posted explicit photos, making thousands of dollars monthly, thousands every month. During all this time, she had spent tens of thousands on advertising and promoting her account, all with my money. I sat in the chair, staring at the figures and comments on her photos, unable to move. Her financial report for April was open in front of me, a total income of $22,000 that month alone. Every dollar I'd given her for charity had gone to boosting her account and drawing in more customers. Instead of helping the needy, she'd spent my money on ads, platforms, and even high-end photo shoots for this career. Gaining control of myself, I decided to talk to her that evening when she got home. But as soon as she walked in, a paralyzing fear and anger overtook me. I knew I couldn't handle this on my own, but I also knew that this couldn't go on. When she asked why I was so quiet, I summoned every ounce of resolve and directly asked her about her OnlyFans account and where our money was really going. She let out a sigh, as if casually, and replied that it was a temporary job to help us pay off the debts. You see, Alex, it makes more money than your job. This month alone, I earned more than I ever could anywhere else. Her words hit with a cold emptiness, each one a knife to the heart. She spoke of these things as if it were normal, as if our whole life had suddenly become a game of followers. I couldn't believe it. She'd decided our financial issues could be solved this way, without even consulting me. This was more than betrayal. It was like my world had turned upside down. I looked at the woman I loved, and I didn't recognize her. Sophie had used me, our life, everything I'd worked for, just as a means to fuel her business. And, judging by her tone, she had no plans to stop. I was shocked and helpless, as if trapped. I couldn't believe that the woman I knew and loved could do this. I wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. This was the moment I realized my life had changed forever, and I'd have to face the reality as it was. Reddit user comments, "Truth Hunter, I'm speechless. I'm so sorry, brother. I can't even imagine how hard this must be for you. Hang in there, it's awful when you trust someone, and they do something like this. Solid advice giver, this is beyond cruel. The fact she didn't even consult you just shows a complete lack of respect. It might sound harsh, but if she did this once, who knows what else could happen. Lost and found again. Look, this is no longer just about money. This is a trust issue. If she's capable of doing this for easy money, she could destroy your life altogether. I'd suggest consulting a lawyer. Stay strong." Cold reality check. This really does sound scary, especially how casually she explained it to you, like it's just business as usual. It seems like she doesn't care about your feelings at all. After that terrible evening, when Sophie openly admitted to earning on OnlyFans as if it were something usual and acceptable, my life turned into a nightmare. It was the end of April, and I was trying with all my strength not only to understand what had happened but also to decide what to do next. I went to the bank to get detailed statements, and what I saw broke me entirely. It turned out that Sophie had spent nearly $35,000 on promoting her account over just 3 months. Every dollar of it was taken under my name. I began spending nights going through financial documents, feeling the weight of these debts chaining me down. I even found a statement for March, where it showed she'd spent $5,500 on just one advertising package. It was a fantastic sum, money that could have been our start on a real business, but instead, it vanished into cyberspace, feeding a profile that was destroying my life. Even worse, now that I'd gathered all the evidence, I couldn't just walk away. Sophie knew I wouldn't leave her with these debts, most of which were in my name. I was essentially a hostage to this situation, and she knew it. I had to turn to a financial consultant to see if there was any way out. The consultant, Jason, after a few days of reviewing the documents, told me I had 2 options: either take on everything and declare bankruptcy or try to negotiate with the banks and creditors, explaining the situation. Either way, It meant that I'd be paying off someone else's debts for the next 5 years, with little hope of ever fully recovering. Meanwhile, Sophie continued as if nothing had happened. I saw her choosing new photos for her profile, planning her next photo shoot, of course, funded by our joint credit lines. Once, she even suggested I relax and accept it, claiming we'd both benefit from her career. When she said that, I wanted to disappear from this world. I felt like I was chained to a sinking ship, and every attempt to escape only sped up the process. I began avoiding her at home, coming back late, leaving early, to see as little of this stranger who used to be my wife as possible. But whenever I was alone, waves of despair would crash over me. How could I have trusted her so blindly? How could I let our life, which I'd built so carefully, turn to ruins? The burden was unbearable, and I realized I needed to find a way out. Friends who didn't know my situation offered advice, but it all felt empty. One night, as I lay awake, I realized I was completely exhausted. I no longer knew who I was or what I was living for. Then I decided that I had to start living for myself again and find a way to leave this life, where I had become nothing more than a funding source for someone who didn't value me. Reddit user comments, "Not your savior. I'm so sorry you're going through this. This sounds like a real nightmare. I know the feeling of betrayal from someone close can break you inside. But as hard as it is, you deserve better. Just do it, man. Dude, it sounds like it's time to put an end to this. You can't let someone turn your life into hell, even if they used to be close. You have resources, and maybe there are lawyers who can help you break free from this trap." Truthful Tina, if I were you, I'd find a way to protect myself. As you said, this is more than a financial issue now, it's broken trust, and if she sees nothing wrong in this, I'm afraid she won't change. Life less complicated. You deserve a fresh start. No amount of debt is worth your life and mental health.